It wasn't just a film about witches, it was a film that felt like one. The Witch, 2015, opens not with spectacle, but with silence, the kind that echoes after a verdict is passed. A Puritan family is cast out of their New England plantation, not for crime, but for believing too deeply in the righteousness of their God. What follows is not just exile, but exposure to the wild, to the unknown, and to something ancient that does not fear scripture. Robert Eggers didn't craft The Witch to entertain, he conjured it. Every whispered prayer, every dimly lit wooden beam, every glance between kin is steeped in unease. The film doesn't scream horror, it whispers it in an old tongue, like a curse you only realize has been spoken after it's already taken hold. Its accuracy is suffocating. 17th century dialect, costuming, and theology are not set dressing, they are weapons. But what truly unsettles isn't the goat or the woods or the witch herself. It's the slow disintegration of certainty, of faith, of the family bond. It's a horror that creeps not from outside, but from within, eating away at obedience, innocence, and the illusion of control. And just when you think you've grasped what's happening, the film reminds you, your fear was never the enemy. Your conviction was. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about The Witch, 2015. Secrets buried beneath the soil of New England folklore, strange rituals on and off screen, and the chilling truths behind one of the most unnerving debuts in modern horror. Fact 1. A script written in the language of the dead. Before a single frame was shot, Robert Eggers spent over 4 years researching Puritan diaries, trial transcripts, and 17th century theology. Not for story, but for language. He didn't just want to mimic the past, he wanted the past to speak for itself. The script for The Witch was written in early modern English, preserving archaic grammar and syntax from actual documents of the time. Phrases like, "Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?" weren't poetic inventions, they were lifted from historical accounts of alleged demonic speech. Eggers was so committed to authenticity that even the actors, many of whom were unfamiliar with the dialect, had to rehearse lines like sacred scripture, often not fully grasping their meaning until delivery. But this wasn't about realism for realism's sake. The unfamiliar language served a darker purpose, to disorient the viewer, to strip away modern safety nets, and to make everything, even love, even prayer, sound alien, as if the film itself were a kind of ritual, conjured in a tongue we were never meant to understand. The result? A script that doesn't just recreate the past, it resurrects it. And some believe that's precisely why the film feels cursed, as if the language it revived brought something else back with it. Fact 2. The goat that refused to act or obey. Black Phillip may be the film's most iconic figure, but he was also its most uncontrollable. The goat, whose real name was Charlie, was meant to perform simple cues, stand, walk, nudge, but refused to follow even basic direction. Worse, he was aggressive. Actor Ralph Ineson, who played William, was gored in the ribs during one scene and nearly couldn't finish filming. Eggers later admitted that Black Phillip ruined most of the scenes he was in, forcing rewrites, improvisation, and last-minute edits. But here's the irony. Those chaotic, unpredictable moments made Black Phillip more menacing. Instead of acting like a trained animal, he behaved like something feral, something watching, something calculating. Some crew members even whispered, half seriously, that the goat wasn't acting because he didn't have to, that whatever spirit Black Phillip was meant to represent had already taken residence in the beast. Fact 3. They lived the horror before they filmed it. To prepare the cast for the oppressive atmosphere of The Witch, Eggers didn't just give them scripts, he gave them isolation. The actors, portraying a family already cast out by their own community, were forced to live for weeks in near-total seclusion. No phones, no electricity, no contact with the outside world. Meals were prepared using 17th century methods. Costumes had to be worn even off-camera. Every detail from their speech to their posture was policed to eliminate modernity. Anya Taylor-Joy later described the experience as lonely, strange, and hard to explain, noting that the boundaries between herself and Thomason blurred. Some nights, she heard scratching sounds in the walls. Others, she dreamed in the dialect of the script. Eggers believed this immersion was necessary to collapse the barrier between actor and character, between fiction and lived experience. But some crew members feared he'd gone too far. By the end of production, what was acting felt more like indoctrination. And for a film about faith, temptation, and unraveling sanity, that was exactly the point. Fact 4. A cinematographer who lit by candle and shadows. The Witch doesn't just look old, it feels old. grainy, dim, textured like rotting parchment. That's not a post-production filter. It was built from the lens up. Cinematographer Jaron Blaschke used almost exclusively natural light and candlelight throughout the film. This wasn't a stylistic flourish, it was a calculated risk. Natural light offers no forgiveness, no glamour. It creates uneven shadows, flickering darkness, and a constant sense that something is lurking just outside the frame. To achieve this effect, Blaschke used Panavision lenses from the 1970 seconds heavily modified to reduce sharpness. The goal was not clarity, but discomfort. Even daylight scenes were shot in overcast conditions, lending everything a gray, deathly pallor. No artificial bounce lights, no hidden rigs. Ironically, the hardest scenes to film weren't in the woods, but indoors, where candlelight meant working in near blindness. Actors missed marks, focus was impossible, but the result is undeniable. A visual language that doesn't just suggest fear, it obscures it until the audience feels as lost as the characters. And in a film where evil thrives in the unseen, that darkness was no accident. It was design. Fact 5. The real witch trials that infected the script. While Salem looms large in pop culture, The Witch drew its nightmares from older, darker sources. Eggers leaned heavily on transcripts from witch trials not in Massachusetts, but in England and Scotland during the early 1600s, decades before the Salem hysteria. These documents weren't just footnotes, they were dialogue. Many of the film's most chilling lines were lifted verbatim from confessions, accusations, and court proceedings recorded during real interrogations of women accused of witchcraft. One line, spoken by Thomasin in tears, "I am that very witch," mirrors an actual confession from a teenage girl in Lancashire, 1612. Another, about the devil giving a book to sign, appears in over 20 historical testimonies across Britain. But Eggers didn't stop there. He borrowed from demonology manuals, Puritan sermons, even midwife reports, detailing unnatural births and beastly temptations. Every myth in the film is rooted in a truth someone once swore under oath. So when the characters scream, confess, or fall into madness, what you're hearing isn't just fiction, it's the echo of real fear, institutionalized paranoia, and a time when belief was deadly. Fact 6. The baby scene that almost got the film banned. One of the film's most disturbing moments occurs early. Baby Samuel disappears, and we cut without warning to a figure in the woods, grinding something into a paste. What follows is never explicitly shown, but the implication is horrific. The child was used to make a flying ointment, a folk legend said to give witches the power to fly. This scene, while brief, nearly cost the witch its distribution in multiple countries. In Germany, censorship boards debated whether it constituted ritualistic violence against infants. In Australia, it narrowly escaped an R18+ rating after heated debate. Yet Eggers insisted the scene remain untouched. Why? Because that image, though grotesque, was historically accurate. Multiple 15th and 16th century witchcraft accounts claimed that the fat of unbaptized children was used in occult rituals. The paste scene in the film was crafted using historical recipes. Anya Taylor-Joy, who hadn't seen the storyboard before filming, reportedly left the set crying after watching a rough cut. She called it the most upsetting thing I've ever seen. Crew members called it necessary, critics called it unforgettable. And the audience? They were left with a question: was this horror or history? Fact 7. The score that was designed to make you physically ill. The Witch doesn't rely on jump scares. It relies on sound that unsettles your body before your brain catches up. Composer Mark Corvin, known for his work on unconventional horror scores, rejected traditional instruments entirely. Instead, he and Eggers commissioned something called the apprehension engine, a handmade instrument created specifically to produce dissonant, anxiety-inducing tone. It uses metal rulers, springs, and bowed wires to create sounds that are neither music nor noise, just dread made audible. Much of the score was recorded in single takes, improvisationally, while watching silent scenes from the film. Corvin let instinct dictate tone, sharp glissandos for moments of collapse, low groans for the woods, shrieking overtones for Black Phillip's presence. Medical research has shown that these kinds of frequencies, especially in the 20-50 Hz range, can cause nausea, vertigo, and feelings of dread. Eggers didn't just want an eerie soundtrack, he wanted to weaponize the soundscape itself. So if you felt uneasy watching The Witch but couldn't explain why, it might not have been the story. It might have been the frequency that slipped beneath your consciousness and stayed there. Fact 8. The twins were almost cut for being too creepy. Mercy and Jonas, the eerie, giggling twins, weren't originally meant to be so central. In fact, Eggers nearly removed them from the script entirely. The issue wasn't with the actors, Ellie Granger and Lucas Dawson, but with what happened during filming. The children were given minimal script instruction and told to play as if you know something no one else does. What emerged was chilling, whispered conversations with Black Phillip, vacant stares, and cryptic rhymes that weren't in the script. One scene, in which the twins chant about the goat, was ad-libbed entirely. The result felt so unnatural that multiple crew members asked if the children were okay off set. Eggers reviewed the footage and decided not only to keep them, but to rewrite scenes around their menace. But the deeper irony is this: the twins aren't ever conclusively proven to be in league with evil. They're only accused. Their performance is ambiguous, childlike, and terrifying all at once. And that's the real horror: how easy it is to believe the worst about innocence when fear is already in the air. Fact 9. The forest was real, and it watched back. Most horror films are shot on backlots or controlled sets. The Witch wasn't. It was filmed deep in the Ontario woods, miles from the nearest road, where no artificial sounds could interrupt filming and no safety nets could be quickly deployed. Eggers wanted the woods to feel sentient, oppressive, but what the crew didn't expect was how the forest seemed to respond. Camera batteries drained faster than expected, compass readings flickered, an entire day of footage was mysteriously lost, data wiped from multiple drives with no technical explanation. Worse, actors reported a consistent sense of being watched, not in the way performers feel under a camera, but viscerally, as if something stood just beyond the trees. One crew member refused to return to location after hearing whispers in the fog, despite no one else being nearby. Eggers brushed off these stories publicly. Privately, he admitted they rattled him. In post-production, the sound team found low-frequency hums in some takes inaudible to the human ear, but detectable on spectrograms. The woods didn't need to act. They were already alive. Fact 10. The delicious line that wasn't in the script. Wouldst thou like to live deliciously? It's the most iconic line in The Witch, quoted, memed, and whispered by horror fans worldwide, but it was almost never said. According to Eggers, the original script featured a more verbose exchange between Black Phillip and Thomason, rooted in historical dialogue. But during filming, the tension in the barn felt too fragile for a long monologue, so Eggers stripped the moment down radically. The final line was written the night before shooting and handed to actor Wahab Chowdhury, who voiced Black Phillip, with a single instruction: make it sound like temptation, not threat. Chowdhury's delivery, sensual, slow, almost reverent, turned a simple question into a theological reckoning. Anya Taylor-Joy didn't hear the line until the ADR dubbing session. Her real-time reaction? Goosebumps. She asked to re-record her breath to match the line's weight. It wasn't just fear, it was seduction. And here's the irony: the line that defines the film, the one printed on posters and merch, wasn't in the plan. It was the devil's improvisation. Fact 11. The goat had a stunt double, but it was never used. Charlie, the real Black Phillip, was unpredictable, so production brought in a backup, a trained black goat from Spain named Nero, who had been featured in commercials and children's films. Nero was obedient, calm, and photogenic, but when placed on set, he refused to move, not out of fear, but indifference. Unlike Charlie, who was aggressive and chaotic, Nero simply ignored cues, people, and even food. The crew called it diva behavior. Eggers called it fate. Every scene ended up being filmed with Charlie, despite the risk. This led to constant tension on set. Insurance claims were filed, first aid kits were on standby, but Eggers insisted there's something in Charlie's eyes that Nero didn't have. That something? A gaze that didn't blink, a presence that felt not goat-like, but aware. And in a story about temptation, sacrifice, and judgment, maybe that's exactly what Black Phillip needed to be. Not trained, but untamed. Fact 12. The ending was designed to mirror a baptism. Thomason's final ascent isn't just a stylistic choice, it's a ritual. The final sequence, where she sheds her clothes, walks into the woods, and rises into the air surrounded by witches, was choreographed to mirror a reversed baptism. Eggers and his team studied Puritan baptism rites, the renunciation of the flesh, the cleansing of sin through water, and the acceptance into grace. In The Witch, that journey is inverted. Thomason renounces her family. She strips off her clothes, but instead of water, she's baptized by firelight from a bonfire, flickering in darkness. The witches chant not in celebration, but in ecstasy. She laughs, but it's not innocence regained, it's power claimed. Eggers deliberately slowed the editing pace, letting each frame linger like a painting. The music, filled with shrill vocals, mirrors church hymns twisted into something primal. So is the ending triumphant, tragic, liberating? That depends on what you think she became and whether she ever had a choice. Fact 13. The witch was cast, then recast, without a word. The witch herself appears on screen for barely a minute in her true form, but that moment, pale, wrinkled skin, hunched back, eyes like soot, burned into the minds of viewers. What most don't know is that the original actress never made it into the final cut. Eggers initially cast a classically trained stage actress in her 60s to play the forest witch, but during test shots, her movements felt too theatrical, too deliberate. Eggers wanted something feral, not perform. So without announcing a formal recast, he replaced her with an elderly woman found through a local casting call, someone with no film experience, no professional training, and according to crew reports, a silence that lingered after she left the room. The woman's identity remains unknown to this day. She's not listed in the credits. Eggers refuses to name her in interviews. Some speculate this anonymity was intentional to preserve the mystique of the character, or because the woman herself requested not to be acknowledged. Whatever the reason, the result is haunting. The witch's presence isn't acted, it's felt, and maybe that's why she doesn't speak in the film. Her silence says more than words ever could. Fact 14. Anya Taylor-Joy didn't know the ending until it was filmed. Most actors get a full script. Anya Taylor-Joy didn't. To preserve her raw reaction, Eggers withheld the final pages of the script from her until days before shooting the ending. He told her only that Thomasin will have a choice to make. The rest was left to ambiguity. When Anya read the final scene, Thomasin joining the witches, floating into the night sky, she cried, not out of fear, but confusion. Was this victory? Was it surrender? Eggers refused to answer. Instead, he told her to play it like your body knows more than your mind. During filming, the cold night, the chanting, the firelight all combined to push her into what she later called a state beyond acting. Her smile at the end wasn't rehearsed. It came instinctively, as if something inside her clicked into place. And that's why the ending works. It's not just Thomasin's liberation or damnation, it's Anya's too. A moment born not of performance, but of surrender. Fact 15. The promotional poster was almost banned for occult suggestion. A24's initial poster for The Witch was simple, a silhouette of a goat against a starless sky, with the tagline, "Evil takes many forms, no blood, no faces, just a goat," but it was enough to trigger backlash. Religious groups across the US protested the imagery, claiming it glorified satanic symbolism. In particular, they took issue with the goat's horns, which mirrored depictions of Baphomet, and the implication that evil was not external but seductive. Several theaters in the Midwest refused to hang the poster. One local cinema reportedly requested a family-safe alternative. A24 responded by creating a neutral version featuring the forest and omitting Black Phillip entirely. But the controversy only fueled interest. The goat became a viral symbol. Merch followed. T-shirts, mugs, even Halloween costumes. What was meant as a quiet threat became a pop culture icon. And Black Phillip, the film's most elusive character, suddenly had a fan base, one that would, perhaps, answer his question with a whispered yes. Fact 16. The title was spelled wrong on purpose. From the very first frame, The Witch unsettles. Not with a scream, but with a spelling, the V-Vitch. Many assumed this was an aesthetic choice or a stylized logo, but it was more deliberate than that. In the 17th century, the letter W as we know it was often typeset as VV, a holdover from early printing presses, where double V's were easier to carve than a singular W glyph. Eggers discovered this while poring over witch trial, pamphlets, and Puritan literature. He wasn't just being clever, he was sending a signal. By restoring the archaic VV, Eggers aligned the film with the typography of its source era, subconsciously transporting the audience into a world before modern language, before rationality, and before horror had rules. It was a subtle act of time travel, baked directly into the title card. And while most viewers never questioned it, the spelling became a quiet invitation. This isn't your horror movie. This is their nightmare. Fact 17. The farm was built by hand, then left to rot. The family's homestead in The Witch looks like something pulled from a historical archive. That's because it practically was. Production designer Craig Lathrop and his team constructed the entire farm from scratch by hand using only 17th century tools and methods. No nails, no power tools, just axes, rope, and wooden pegs. Even the thatching on the roof was period accurate, imported from New England reeds. The process took months, and the set was deliberately built in a clearing surrounded by woods, with no soundstage backup. It had no plumbing, no heating, and no lighting. For all intents and purposes, it was a real 1,630 seconds farm. But once filming wrapped, a 24 left the structure standing. Locals reported that the building began decaying within weeks. Moss overtook the roof. Animals moved in. Visitors said the place felt wrong. Eventually, it collapsed under snowfall. Today, nothing remains of the house except a foundation of disturbed earth. But for those who stood inside it, the memory lingers, a house built for fiction, now lost to the forest it tried to survive. Fact 18. The first screening left audiences arguing, not screaming. When The Witch premiered at Sundance in 2015, expectations were high. But the reaction wasn't fear, it was division. Some viewers praised it as a masterpiece of psychological horror. Others walked out, confused or frustrated by its pacing and ambiguity. The post-screening Q&A devolved into open debate. One attendee accused Eggers of glorifying paganism. Another called it a theological drama disguised as horror. Eggers didn't flinch. He said the goal was never to scare in the traditional sense, but to disturb, unmoor, and haunt. He cited influences not from slasher films, but from Bergman, Dreyer, and even silent-era expressionism. A 24 leaned into the controversy. They marketed The Witch as a New England folktale instead of a horror movie, playing up the historical angle to lure in a broader audience. The strategy worked, but the arguments persisted. To this day, The Witch divides viewers. Is it a feminist parable, a Puritan tragedy, a descent into madness, or a liberation into power? The answer may depend not on what you saw, but on what you feared. Fact 19. One word was banned from set: witch. Despite being the title of the film, the word witch was almost never spoken during production, not in rehearsals, not on set, not even in direction notes. Eggers implemented an informal rule: avoid calling the character the witch unless absolutely necessary. Why? Because he wanted the actors to engage with the material without assumptions. To the Puritan family, the word witch wasn't genre, it was theology, law, and mortal threat. Using it casually would have flattened the stakes. Instead, actors referred to the entity as the thing in the woods, the presence, or simply her. Even in blocking, Eggers would say, "She stands there," without specifying more. This rule extended to the editing room. The crew reported that Eggers rarely labeled footage with witch in the file names, opting instead for neutral codes. Ironically, by avoiding the term, they gave it more power. When it finally is uttered on screen, it lands like a curse, heavy, ancient, and unforgiving. Fact 20. The Devil's Book exists, but no one has seen it. In the film's climactic scene, Black Phillip tells Thomason to sign the book, a reference drawn directly from historical accounts of satanic pacts. But what most viewers don't know is that a physical book was actually created for the film and then mysteriously vanished. Prop master Matt Likely designed the Devil's Book as a leather-bound volume, filled with blank pages aged to look centuries old. The cover bore no title, only an embossed sigil said to be inspired by occult woodcuts from the 1500s. The book was never shown in close-up. Eggers intentionally kept it in shadows or partially obscured, believing that its mystery mattered more than its details. After filming, the book was stored in a 24's prop archive, but when fans requested to see it at conventions, press events, even museum exhibits, the studio said it was unavailable. Crew members have conflicting stories. Some say it was damaged, others say it was lost in shipping. A few whisper that Eggers himself requested it never be displayed. Whether it was lost, hidden, or something else entirely, the Devil's Book remains unseen, just as it should be. Bonus fact: the curse of the goat's eye. Throughout The Witch, Black Phillip remains mostly silent, just a shadow in the corner of the frame. But there's one moment that freezes even the most skeptical viewer. When his eye catches the light, it happens quickly, a flash, a glint. The camera lingers for less than 2 seconds on Charlie's face, and his pupil reflects not the surrounding firelight, but something wrong. Viewers have described it as a slit, like a serpent. Others claim it looks like it blinks horizontally. Theories erupted online. Some paused the frame and swore they saw a human iris. Others believed it was CGI, but according to cinematographer Jaron Blaschke, the shot was entirely practical. No visual effects, no manipulation. We don't know why the eye looked like that, he admitted in a 2016 interview. It just did. Still, rumors persisted. A crew member anonymously claimed that every time they tried to reshoot that angle, the goat moved except during the take that made it into the film. Others noted that the lighting rig used in that scene failed shortly after, and that no one could replicate the gleam on Charlie's eye, no matter how they tried. Eggers has never addressed the shot directly. In fact, he avoids discussing it at all, but when asked about Black Phillip's power, he simply replied, "Sometimes, things reveal themselves when you stop trying to control them." And maybe that's the truth of the witch. The most terrifying thing isn't what you can see, it's what looks back. Which fact left you with more questions than answers? Was Thomason's ending liberation or something far darker? Tell us in the comments which detail you'd never heard before, and which moment from The Witch still haunts you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone who thinks horror doesn't need to scream to be terrifying. And if you have another film you want us to dissect frame by frame, line by line, leave your suggestion below. We're always watching, just like the woods.